How do I tell my kids that Nigeria gained independence in 1960, only to be dragged backward by politicians with minds so filthy? How do I tell my kids that Nigeria is not a banana republic, yet chewed to the bone by leaders whose greed is so toxic? How do I tell my kids they are the leaders of tomorrow, in a nation hijacked by men who already borrowed tomorrow? How do I tell my kids that in Nigeria lives don't matter, where every sunrise arrives with news of another slaughter? Not because they committed any offense or crime, but because they are Nigerians, born at the wrong time. How do I tell my kids that Nigeria still lives in darkness, decades after freedom, trapped in deliberate heartlessness? How do I tell my kids there is no stable electricity, many years after independence, still begging for basic dignity? How do I tell my kids there is no potable water to drink, in the 21st century, still stranded at the edge of the sink? How do I tell my kids about corruption everywhere, where public wealth is private comfort a few men wear? How do I teach them honesty, truth, and dedication, when looting has become an accepted occupation? How do I tell my kids about rising insecurity, where fear has replaced peace and hope lacks maturity, where roads become graves and homes no longer safe, and mothers pray daily their children escape? How do I tell my kids that being in a police cell may be worse than being in a kidnapper's den? How do I tell them they shouldn't mistake the police for their friends? How do I tell my kids to be dreadful of the police that is supposed to protect them? How do I tell my kids we are one nation standing, when bigotry and tribal hate keep expanding, where names and tongues decide who belongs, and unity survives only in national songs? How do I tell my kids about nepotism and favoritism, where merit bows daily before godfatherism, where doors open not by effort or by skill, but by family ties and a powerful will? How do I tell my kids about backstabbing and praise, where sycophants flourish and integrity decays, where truth is punished and flattery rewarded, and conscience is traded and honor discarded? How do I tell my kids to dream, to hope, to believe, when the system teaches them only how to grieve? How do I tell my kids to love a country so broken, where promises are constant but justice unspoken? How do I tell my kids not to give up on this nation, when patience has become our longest occupation?